Today I'm gonna sew a dress. Hi, my name's Megan. Welcome to my sewing space, and in this week's video I'm going to be sewing a dress with this pretty blue fabric that has been sitting in my stash for years at this point. I have an idea in my head of what I want to make with this, and I'm going to try and execute it today. Now, I have to keep in mind while I'm doing this that, like so many of the fabrics I have been using recently, this one is completely see-through. So I'm gonna have to double up chest to knees so you can't see any of my bits. The first thing I'm gonna do is cut out my pieces. The first thing I need to do to figure out my pattern pieces is to take my measurements. So I'm measuring from my upper bust to a few inches above my knee. And then I'm doubling this number because I'm gonna fold my main body piece in half to double my layers. And I'm adding 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Then I'm taking my hip measurement because that's the widest point on my body. If the widest point on your body is your bust or your waist, I would take that measurement instead. And then I add 10 inches, then divide by 2, and add 1 inch for seam allowance. And that's gonna give me my main body piece, and I'm gonna cut 2 of these. I'm going to measure for my bottom tier next. My width is going to be my hip measurement plus 10 inches, and then I'm gonna multiply that by 1.5 and divide by 2. Then I'm adding 1 inch for seam allowance. Then for the length, I'm going to measure from where my main body piece ends above my knee to my desired length. And I'm adding 1 inch for seam allowance and hemming. Cut 2 of these. For the sleeves, I'm measuring around my arm like this, and then multiplying this measurement by 2. And that's gonna give me a nice full sleeve. Then I'm adding 1 inch for seam allowance. Then I'm measuring from my shoulder where I want my sleeve to sit, and then measuring down to where I want my elastic to be. And for me, that's right above my elbow. And then I'm gonna add 3 inches to accommodate a ruffled edge, which I'll show you later. And then I'm adding 1.5 inches for seam allowance, hemming, and my elastic casing. Cut 2 of these for my sleeve pieces. And then I also need 2 strips of fabric, 1 inch wide, and then the length is gonna be the width of my sleeve piece. And then I'll use these strips for my elastic casing later. If you want to use bias binding instead, you certainly can. Okay, so for the main body piece, we're gonna fold one of the main body pieces wrong sides together and then pin down the side seams. And then I'm pressing the top edge nice and flat and neat. And then I'm serging my side seams closed. This is creating my outer piece and my lining all in one go. And if you don't have a serger, you can sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Next, we're gonna do the shirred bust. I'm measuring from my upper bust to 1 inch or 2 below my boob, which gives me about 9 inches. Then I'm gonna be using shearing elastic on my bobbin. Right side of my project facing up, I'm gonna start doing rows of shearing, starting at my upper folded edge until I get to my 9 inches of shearing completed. For me, that was about 21 rows. I did a video a little while back on how I made a sheared top from a pillowcase. If you want a more detailed video on how to shear fabric, I will link this video for you to go check out. Next, I'm setting my iron to steam setting and steaming my work to help shrink up that shearing. And here's what this looks like so far. Now I just have to do the other panel. Okay, 2 main body panels complete, onto the sleeves. I'm folding my sleeve pieces together, and at the top edge where my sleeve is going to be sewn to the main body, so I'm going to measure over from the side seam about 4 inches and then down about 6 inches. And then I'm going to draw a line connecting those 2 points and then cut that triangle shape out. Here's what that's gonna look like. And that's just gonna give me some extra space under my armpit. I'm gonna do that with both sleeve pieces. And then I'm gonna take a minute to serge the raw edges of those 1-inch strips that I cut out that I'm using for my elastic casing. Now we're gonna work on sewing the elastic casing to the sleeve next. So on the wrong side of the fabric of my sleeve, I'm measuring about 3 inches from the bottom hem and drawing a line. And then I'm lining up my strip of fabric with that line I drew and pinning it in place, wrong sides together. And then I'm sewing down one edge and then the other between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch to create my elastic casing. Here's what that looks like. Then I'm creating a hem by ironing up the bottom of the sleeve 1/4 inch twice, pinning and sewing in place. And then for the shoulder elastic casing, I'm pressing the fabric 1/4 of an inch to the wrong side, and then fold and press again, this time at 3/4 of an inch. Pinning in place, and then sewing the casing at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. For this project, I'm using 1/2 inch wide elastic, and I'm just measuring around my arm where I want the lower elastic to sit and cutting 2 pieces, and then around my shoulder like this, and again cutting 2 pieces. Using a safety pin, I'm threading my elastics through the casings I made, and then carefully lining up the elastic so it is even with the edge of the casing. I'm pinning it here and then sewing the elastic and the casing at a narrow seam allowance so the elastics all stay in place. Measure the length of the sleeve edge that we cut from earlier. It's about 7 inches. And then on my main body piece, I'm measuring over 2 inches from the side seam and marking this with a little nick from my scissors. And then measuring down 7 inches at an angle towards the side seam. Cut out this triangle on both sides for the main body pieces. Next, right sides together, I'm pinning the sleeves to the main body pieces. It's a little bit tricky. But when you are done, it should look like this. Notice the side seams and the underarm seams are not finished yet. We will finish those later. At a 1/2 inch seam allowance, serge or sew the sleeves to the main body pieces. Next, pin the sleeve seam together, starting at the ruffle edge and to the underarm. Line the elastic casings up and the underarm up. And then continue pinning down the side seam to the bottom edge. Serge or sew in place at 1/2 inch seam allowance. And give everything a good press. Now at this point, I could hem the bottom of this dress if I wanted and have a completed dress, but I'm going to add that bottom tier, so I'm pinning my 2 bottom tier pieces together at the side seams and serging in place at 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm just taking a minute to even out the bottom of my main body pieces because they're a little uneven. And I'm gonna baste this bottom edge so nothing else moves while we're trying to attach my bottom tier. I'm sewing one line of gathering stitches along the top edge of my bottom tier. Normally I would do 2 rows. It's so light that I'm able to get away with just 1 row today. And I'm gathering up this tier so it's the same circumference as the bottom of my main body piece. And then with right sides together, I'm pinning the bottom tier to my main body piece and serging at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then I'm giving the gathers a good press. And I'm unpicking any of the exposed gathering stitches. And then for my bottom hem, I'm folding up the bottom edge of my dress at around a 1/4 inch twice, pinning and sewing in place. And voila, finished dress is complete. What do you guys think? So, do I love this dress? Yes, I do. And am I going to wear it all the time? Probably not. It's just a little more formal than what I would wear in my everyday life. I do have a wedding coming up in a couple of days that I do plan on wearing this dress to, and I think it's going to be a great wedding guest dress. But as far as, you know, wearing it to the grocery store or the coffee shop, probably not. This dress is exactly what I pictured in my mind when sewing this together. This is exactly what I wanted. With that being said, now that it's done, I definitely feel like it's giving Wendy Darling from Peter Pan vibes. So I might be incorporating this into a Halloween costume this fall. Who knows? It's certainly an option. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!